Okay, I'd like to welcome Aaron Sutter from Lansing Lawn Service to the show. Hey, Aaron, how are you doing?
Doing great.
How are things up there? It's in Michigan, right?
Yes. Yeah. We're in Michigan. I'm just outside of Lansing.
Okay.
That's the state capital.
Okay.
And it's been in the 20s the last week.
Oh,
So doing fall cleanups in the 20s is no
nice.
fun.
No
But
fun.
we've also we've also been getting snow on and off. So
Okay, yeah.
it's made things pretty wet.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. So let's
Yeah.
just get straight into it. So maybe tell us a bit about yourself and your business.
All right. Well, uh, I am Aaron Sutter. I always like to start that way.
Yeah.
Um, and I am a solo operator right now.
Okay.
I am looking this winter to put some systems in place to be able to bring somebody on and grow a little bit. I'm about at the max of what I can take on right now. I've got 50 clients, and so uh, it's quite a bit of work for me. Lansing is very spread out, and so there's quite a bit of drive time between certain clients. So being able to bring on that employee is going to be able to help me out a little bit. And I started in 2014, and
Okay.
I started with just what I had in my garage, which was a push mower, a curved shaft trimmer, and a blower that I got from a store that we have up here. Well, I guess for you it's down here,
Yeah.
but in a store called Menards,
Okay.
and it was a piece of junk, but it
Yeah.
worked. So that's how I got started.
Yeah, nice. Very, very cool. So is at this point, lawn care, is your lawn care business your main income or is it just a side hustle?
Yeah, my lawn care business is my main form of income. I started it when I was working full time, but it's grown into something that I can do full time.
Okay, awesome. So, what first attracted you to the lawn care industry and made you want to start your own business?
Uh, well, as many guys do, I started when I was 10 years old or so. I had my dad make up these little flyers, and it was Sutter's Lawn Mowing.
Hmm.
And so I hung these around town, and we had the little phone number tabs
Oh yeah, yeah,
on the flyers that you pull off. They didn't have the internet back then.
yeah.
And so I did that, and I only got one phone call,
Hmm.
and it was from this guy in a neighboring town to us, and I was so nervous because I hated talking to people on the phone. It was awful, and so he called me, and my mother answered the phone, and she called me over and said, "There's somebody on the phone for you." And I was like, "Oh, great." I hate talking on the phone. So I got on the phone, and oh, it was so bad. I said, "Hello, hello, hello," and the guy started talking, and he was an older gentleman and needed his lawn cut, so I was able to do that. At that time, uh, we did have a push mower and a weed eater, but I didn't have a blower, so we used a broom to broom off all the sidewalks
Yeah.
and things like that. But that's when I started. Then from there, I grew a little bit. My brother and I took on a church cemetery.
Okay.
They provided the walk behind mower and all the equipment, and we just showed up and did it. So, kind of got me into the lawn care a little bit
Yeah.
more that way, the commercial side of it, and seeing what it was all about. And then did that for a few years, then took a break and went into construction. I was still in high school at the time,
Okay.
and then I worked construction for 10 years, then went into retail and learned a bit more about business there.
Okay.
Worked my way up from the bottom minimum wage to management. So
Hmm.
I was there for 10 years as well, and learned a lot about business and how to communicate with people and talk to clients. And then from there, I went into the healthcare industry.
Oh, okay.
So I've worked in all different
All
kinds of
sorts of
things. I was a phlebotomist in a hospital,
a
and
phlebotomist. I've never even heard of that.
yeah, yeah, that's the person that draws blood.
Oh,
So
okay.
I I had the and still do have the ability to work in a lab or in a hospital or doctor's office or whatever.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's kind of my backup plan if lawn care ever decides to go south on me.
Hmm.
Uh, I can always jump right back into that without a problem.
Into
Um,
phlebotomy.
yep. my dad, when I told him that I was a phlebotomist, we talked for a little bit, and then he said, "What are you again? A lobotomist?" So, yep, phlebotomy is just the person that draws your blood.
Okay.
So, um,
So
yeah,
a legal,
that
a certified vampire.
exactly, exactly. Yep,
That's
and
that's
I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, by the way,
yeah.
I'm a vampire. uh, and interestingly enough, when I went into it, I was super scared of needles. Like, I
Oh yeah.
hated getting shots.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I, I despised needles. And now it's just like, whatever, go ahead. Because
Yeah, yeah.
when you're a student learning this stuff, the students, they
Yep.
they poke each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, let me tell you, the first blood draw in class was super scary
Yeah,
because
yeah.
none of us had any experience.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that
But
would be.
it was good.
Yeah.
So, from there, I was working about 38 hours a week in the hospital, and I decided that I had too much time on my hands, and so I started my lawn care business from that, just part time. Actually, my wife and I wanted to buy a like a pop up camper,
Okay.
and
Yep.
our incomes together at that time didn't weren't going to cut it. So
Hmm.
I decided to start lawn care. I figured I did it as a kid, I could do it again. And so I started advertising on Craigslist, and it got about 12 clients from that.
Nice.
And that was the first year. And I made enough money to buy a used pop up camper that year, which was really
Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
And so I decided to continue it for the next year. And I took on about 12 more clients while still working full time at the hospital.
Hmm.
So I'm now at this time about 24, 25 clients. And it was a lot of work. I was working
Yeah.
about 80 hours a week. And so that following year, we decided that I was, I knew enough of what I was doing with advertising and things like that, that I could take on uh, lawn care full time. And
Okay.
so I jumped in, left the hospital, and haven't looked back since.
Awesome. Very, very cool. So you mentioned there at the beginning, talking about your business that you've been a single owner operator, but you're, planning on putting systems in place to expand on that. So where, or talk about maybe those growing pains of when you started first seeing that, like what was your thought process in that? Was it, just the amount of work that you want to do or are able to do versus having help, or is it other factors that like some guys will start doing it because they start to get older and can't keep up and want to sort of keep that pace going and stuff.
It's kind of twofold for me. I am getting older. I'm not old. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
only 38,
yeah.
but but definitely, you get body aches and things like that.
Hmm.
And every time, like, my back starts hurting, I at least once a year, I get, it's usually in the spring. when I first get going again.
Yeah.
Usually the back is just screaming at you for about a week.
Hmm.
And every time I think, I really should probably hire somebody, because if something happens to me, you know, the business will fall apart because
Yeah.
I'm the only one
Yes.
doing anything here. So there's that aspect. And that's not a huge issue for me right now, but I do think about it.
Hmm.
The other aspect is that I'm about at the limit of what I can do for taking on more work, and I would really love to grow the business into something that can support me without me having to do all the work.
Okay.
Um, and so, uh, over the next several years, I'd love to put together like a two-man crew that can actually go out and do the work, and I would oversee them and do sales and things like that,
Yeah.
to grow the business, to not only support me, but uh, also help support others,
Mm.
because it's not just, I don't want this business just to, I mean, I do want it to support me, but I'd love to also employ others and give them the opportunity to work hard and get that satisfaction that I get out of doing the work. So
Hmm.
that's where I'm at with it right now. It may never happen. I said this last year too. I need to bring somebody on, and then I end up not doing it.
Hmm.
There, for me, there's a lot of fear there
Yeah.
that because you see people talking about their horror stories with
Yes.
employees, and
Yeah.
and so there's the fear factor there, but uh, over the summer I've really been reading and listening to audiobooks on how to build a strong business and with employees. And the overlying theme is that if you train them properly, uh, you won't have as many
Hmm.
issues. Of course, you're always going to have issues
Yes.
with people who aren't you, that are operating your business on some certain level. So I get that an employee isn't going to care about my business as much as I do.
Hmm.
They're there for a paycheck ultimately. So, but if I can get them to see my vision for where I want the business to go, and my vision for helping them as an employee to grow, then I think uh, ultimately it would be a worthwhile try, at least, to bring
Hmm.
on some employees and
Yeah.
see if I can't grow this business beyond what I've grown it to so far.
Yeah. I think an important thing too is in that process, if you decide to go that way, is vetting clients, or sorry, vetting
Hmm.
your employees as well, right? Before you hire them,
Yep.
is making sure you're selecting the right people, and just their character and stuff like that, so that
Right.
you're starting on a good footing from the beginning.
Yes.
And also, it's one of those things where if it's something that you're thinking about, you don't want to have any regrets in the future in thinking about, what if I had hired, people
Right.
to do it? Where could I have been now, and stuff like that, and getting out of that comfort zone. I totally resonate with that. It's exactly the same every year. I think the same thing, that I should bring on employees.
Hmm.
I do love being employed by myself. I love the freedom of not having to, stop for lunches because of an employee for 30 minutes, or having to take coffee breaks or things like that, where I can, hustle all day long and get off early if I want to, go pick
Hmm.
up the kids or whatever it is that I need to do. So that's one of those things where it's like I feel there's a bit of a trade off, but ultimately, I guess if you get over that hump, it's a few years of maybe some short term discomfort in that point. But once those employees are trained and trustworthy enough, then you actually have more freedom because you can step away and
Yep.
and have them. So it's kind of that sort of short term uncomfortable period, right? Of getting them trained
Yes.
maybe for the first few years and stuff, and then it becomes a lot easier after that.
Yep.
Um, so my next question is one of my absolute favorites, and it's how would you define success?
Success to me is, and it always has been, uh, since I started the business, was to have freedom to be home with my family in the evening. Working retail and in the medical field, it's a lot of evenings or nights and weekends.
Hmm.
And I was never able to be home uh, on the weekends in the healthcare field. It was always just, I mean, you go, the hours are so weird. And it, even if you're there, like once we had a snowstorm and it was my last work day of the week, and we had a snowstorm come through, and it was pretty bad. And they do something called mandating, where if enough employees call in or whatever, and you're there, you get mandated for the next shift.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I worked a 16-hour shift that day, and
Mm.
it was just, I hated it.
Hmm.
And I was also part of a union, and so I hated the union too.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but so it's always, success has never been about money for me. In fact, I told my wife before we got married, even before we started dating, I said, I'm probably destined not to make a whole lot of money. and
Mm.
uh and so, because my dad's a pastor, he doesn't
Yeah.
make a lot of money because he's a pastor. And at that time I was actually looking at going into the ministry, and typically in the ministry you don't make a lot of money.
Hmm.
And so that's what I told her at the time. And so success for me has never been about money. It's been about being able to do the things I want to do, with the people that I want to do them with. And
Hmm.
so that's my family.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, perfect example of why I love that question. Everybody has a different answer, and there's no, right or wrong. It's whatever is, that person's perspective. But that's, yeah, awesome. A funny thing that you mentioned, unions. I'm sort of that same way. I grew up with my dad working as a laborer in construction, and he was
Hmm.
always, union, working for union and stuff like that. So I grew up in that. Yes, unions are great. Then, I got into a job that was unionized myself. And for the type of work we were doing, it was a vehicle emission testing station. So basically,
Hmm.
cars had to get emissions tested to be able to put insurance on them each year. So for having a job where I had no training, where basically it was like, get in this car, drive it on this dynamometer and follow the little screen on the computer, and the computer will spit out whether that car passed or failed emissions testing. So no college or anything necessary. We were making a pretty good wage, and it was because of the union. Because if it wasn't for the
Hmm.
union, there's no way we would have gotten paid what we were getting paid to sit in the car with no training. But at the same time, for somebody like me who's kind of a go-getter and would want to work up the corporate ladder, there was so much stuff in my way because of the union, because
Hmm.
this person who was super lazy, but they had more seniority and stuff like that, and it was just like, it
Hmm.
drove me crazy.
Yep.
that
I
that
always
aspect.
I always describe the union as, basically you put your nose in the butt of the guy in front of you and just follow the
Yeah,
trail,
yeah, yeah,
because you can't move up unless somebody leaves or gets promoted.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's crazy
So
right now.
it was soul crushing.
Yeah, yeah. Right now it's kind of funny. Uh, there was a strike here recently, just last week, with the transit bus drivers. And
Hmm.
both my best friend here is a bus driver, and my brother is a bus driver. But
Okay.
it's so infuriating to me as a business owner to hear
Hmm.
these guys like on the news, and they want, more money, and they want to make, it was like up to like $89,000 a year now to be a bus driver, with 5 weeks of
Wow.
vacation after your first year. And I'm like, are you kidding me? With no training, no university required, no, even your license to be a bus driver, the company, once you're hired, pays for all of your, driver's tests and training and all that stuff to get all your air brake certifications and all that stuff. And I'm like, to sit in a bus and drive? Like, are you guys out to
Yep.
lunch? I'm like, that's
Yep.
insane.
Yep.
Like I say, it's funny because, yeah.
We went through the same thing here in Michigan with GM. GM workers went on strike for I think it was 4 weeks this summer, and so yeah, it was the strike was actually to the point where it was going to start really affecting the economy
Okay.
because
Yeah.
they hadn't worked in so long. So, but yeah, it's the same thing here. They don't get any training. They don't have to have a degree or anything, you know, and they get 50, 60,000 a year, and it's it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Um, so what is your favorite tool and why? And I asked this question um, just to sort of gauge the types of properties you're doing. For me, most of my stuff is, probably over 50%, 60% is all 21-inch mower, small city lots, with my biggest mower being a 36. So what type of equipment do you use there?
The type of equipment that I use, I actually have three different size mowers. I have
Okay.
my Toro Multiforce, which is a 52-inch deck.
Hmm.
Then I have a residential Hustler Raptor SD, and that's a 42-inch deck.
Okay.
And that's my backyard mower that gets through most of my backyard
Oh,
gates.
nice.
And then I have a Toro Time Master, which is 30 inches.
Okay.
Uh, and then for stick equipment, I run all Echo. And the only
Mm.
reason that I run all Echo is because I was buying junk equipment when I first started out. And the weed eater that I was using, it was actually a 4 cycle, and
Hmm.
I ran it out of oil because there was no
Oh,
good way to check the oil.
yeah. Yeah.
And I was super mad about that. So I went into Home Depot just to pick up another cheap weed eater, and I picked up an Echo SRM 225,
Yeah.
and that thing just kicked butt and took names for 3 years for me. And so that's still to this day, that's my favorite Echo uh, trimmer.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say my favorite piece of equipment, though, would probably be my Toro Multiforce,
Yeah.
um, simply because it's been rock solid. I haven't had any issues with it,
Okay.
um, uh, and it's comfortable to ride. I bought a Gravely Pro Stance this spring,
Hmm.
and hoping to retire the Toro Multiforce because it's got over 1,000 hours on it now. It's well out of warranty, but that was a mistake. I shouldn't have bought the Gravely.
Mm.
In fact, I still have it in my garage. I put 40 hours on it this spring, and the cut quality isn't there,
Mm.
and so it's sat in my garage. I've tried to sell it. Nobody wants it. So
Mm.
it's been tough looking at that thing every day. But
Mm.
hopefully this spring we'll find a buyer for it, even if I have to drive it down south or whatever.
Mhm.
We'll see. But yeah, I think the favorite piece of equipment right now is the Toro Multiforce. It's been a workhorse.
Okay, awesome. Is that the ones that you can put like attachments or change up what it does?
Yes, you can do attachments. Apparently, they are working on a snowblower attachment.
Oh, well.
They already currently have a snowplow, and
Mm-hmm.
a rotary brush. I don't have any of the attachments.
Mm-hmm.
They are extremely expensive,
Mm-hmm.
but my dealer actually brought this unit in for a demo that they were doing for like their dealer days type thing. And so they put a few hours on it, and then they had it, and it sat for a while. Nobody wanted it, and so I came in. They had the thing discounted heavily,
Mm.
and so I got the multi-force for the same price as you could get a regular grandstand.
Oh, okay.
And so I decided, hey, that's a pretty good price. We'll do that, because normally they're 12 grand or so,
Yeah, yeah.
and a regular grandstand is like 9. So
Mm.
I got a really good deal on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a really good deal. Yeah, I've seen them being used with like snow plows on them and stuff, and they
yep,
seem to do pretty well with that. And you're saying it has 1,000 hours. For me, I don't think that's I wouldn't consider that a lot. I would still consider that a baby. Like it's like I've bought and used mowers with more hours than that, and they've run fine for years and
sure.
years.
Well, see, that's the thing. My inexperience with buying equipment, because I've been in this industry for 5 years,
Hmm.
and up until I purchased the Multiforce, I had only bought residential zero turns, and
Okay.
so my inexperience with buying any other equipment had kind of kicked in there, and um, so I know better now.
Yeah, yeah,
But uh, you know,
yeah.
at the time, this spring even, I was, I really wanted, to try something different, see if
Okay.
something else might be just as good or better. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, the Gravely just isn't.
Yeah, yeah.
So hopefully someday I will be able to sell it. And I mean, the Gravely. And
Yeah.
then maybe I will even be able to get some attachments for the
The month.
multi-force.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
yeah.
So do you offer any services that are not lawn care or landscaping related, like maybe power washing or window cleaning, for example?
No, I don't do anything that is not lawn care related.
Okay.
Well, I take that back. I do gutter cleaning. So
Okay.
I do offer that. Um, I don't get a lot of takers on that, but uh, I do offer that, and some of my clients do take advantage of that, especially some of the older clients who can't
Yeah.
get up and do it themselves anymore. So
What's your preferred method for gutter cleaning? Is it you just old school on a ladder by hand, or do you get up on the roof and blow them out, or pressure washing with a big wand?
my preferred method is the old ladder with the bucket and clean
Okay.
them out by hand,
Okay.
um, because I feel like I can get a lot of the shingle asphalt out of there better by hand than I can with a blower.
Okay.
I also feel like the blower kind of makes a little bit more of a mess.
Yes,
So
down below. Yeah.
yeah, so I tend to do it by hand. I have done it with a blower before, but I prefer to do it by hand.
Okay.
It makes it cleaner.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. A bit cleaner that way. I've seen guys doing with vacuums as well, but it's very cumbersome to either have a vacuum up
Hmm.
there with you or to have a huge hose and you're trying to navigate it over the gutter edge and stuff like that.
Yep.
And sometimes doesn't quite fit in the gutter. And
Right.
yeah,
And then my thing is, how do you know as you're going that you're actually getting it clean?
yeah,
Because I know here in Lansing, we have just so many trees. It's unreal.
mm,
Um, and a lot of times people won't clean their gutters for 3 or 4 years, and they'll have little trees growing out of them. And there's no way you're going to suck that out with a vacuum. So,
mm, mm,
um, I mean, I've had, just hundreds of pounds of stuff in gutters before. So uh, it really, uh, in my opinion, I don't think the vacuums are good unless the gutters have been cleaned in the year before or years past, and they're relatively clean, and you just have fresh leaves in there.
yeah, yeah,
But other than that, uh, vacuums could be an okay way to go, I guess.
yeah, yeah. I guess there's lots of different. That's why I asked you what your preferred method was
Yeah.
of doing it. So, what type of work do you prefer, commercial or residential, and why?
I definitely prefer residential. Um, Here in Lansing, we have a m- lower to middle class demographic, and especially in Lansing itself, some of the suburbs and things aren't as bad, but in Lansing, there's just trash everywhere,
Okay.
and residential there's hardly any trash, but on commercial properties you spend more time picking up trash than you do actually cutting the property.
Okay.
And so I have had uh, about 4 or 5 commercials in the past. Now I'm down to 3,
Okay.
and they're in areas that are pretty clean.
Mhm.
So but by far I prefer residential. I find that um, the client communication is much better. I also find that um, the expectations are the same or a little bit better with residential. And gosh, now I lost my train of thought. Um, and I feel like there's they're more appreciative for
Okay.
sure
Yes,
of the work
definitely.
that you do. So that that's my reasons for liking residential more than commercial. And also um, most commercial, they 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 try to reassess every year and
Mhm.
try to get the lowest price. Whereas residential, if you do a good job and um, your your communication is good, normally they keep you on for as
Mhm.
long as you want to be there. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how it's completely different in that respect.
yep,
Whereas you'll do my experience has always been doing commercial, no matter how well or good of a job I would do, it would still go up to bid. If I wanted to raise the price, I would lose the job, and things like that. Whereas, residentials, um, I had a customer this year. I picked them up for the first time this year, and I was doing their lawn. And towards the end of October, they're doing the last cuts. The owner came up to me and said, we're really hoping that you'll, consider taking us on for next year as well and stuff like that. I'm like, really? Thinking ahead in my
yeah,
head, like, really? Like, of course I'm going to take you on, right? Sort
yeah,
of thing. But they're like, like begging you almost to continue
yep.
service and stuff, right? So it's
Yep.
totally funny how it's completely different in that
Oh,
respect with those
absolutely.
two. Yeah.
And
Um,
it's so hard for residential clients to find a good contractor or a lawn guy, someone that's reliable
yeah.
to do their work. I mean, I hear it all the time. How I pick up a new client and they say, our last guy just didn't show up, or he comes on a different day every week. And
Hmm.
um, so uh, I find that if you can be just uh, keep your schedule, and you can be reliable and offer reliable service, you're going to have your clients for years and years to come,
Hmm.
unless you do something really bad to screw it up.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's probably part of my own success in lawn care is that I'm so
Yep.
OCD about that and the schedule
Mm-hmm.
that like
Yep.
here, of course, Pacific Northwest with the rain or shine, it doesn't matter. Like if it's your day,
Yep.
I am there. Like to
Yeah.
mow, I'm not missing a day, right? So it's like I'm there every week, regardless of what's going on, and you know. Uh, I think that's part of what really helps
Yep.
because they know it's
I have
just
a story to go along with what I said.
yeah.
I have a
Go ahead.
story to go along with what I said there.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of my favorite clients, they the man of the house is older and he can't really get around much anymore, but he loves the Detroit Tigers.
Okay.
And so I was out. They have some hedges, and I was trimming their hedges, and they have their TV cable. Uh, it's overhead, and it goes right over one of their hedges. And so
Okay.
I was out trimming the hedges, and the Tigers were supposed to come on in about 5 minutes. And he's a rabid Tigers fan. And so I was using, a long Echo extension pole
Yeah.
to trim these hedges. And the lady of the house came out, and so kind of startled me. And I turned around and picked up the hedge trimmer, and it went up and it clipped the cable line.
Oh no.
And I was, oh my gosh, I was so apologetic, and I said, I'm so sorry. And she's like, oh, he's not gonna like this. Because he can't get out anymore. And so the Tigers are his life. And so I was super apologetic. And of course I said, I'll pay for whatever it costs to fix it. And so he was, I guess, one of his kids came over and got him and was able to get him over to their house so he could watch the Tigers game. And the next week I went back, and she came out and talked to me and said, it was probably a good thing that you cut that line, because the cable guy said that it was so brittle that a squirrel walking across it probably could have broken it. And she said, uh, so don't worry about paying for it. We'll take care of it. You do such a good job that we just hope that you come back next year and do our lawn again. I'm like, oh my gosh. So that I say all that just to say, if you're good to your clients and you do a good job and you're on time and you stick to the schedule, you can do almost, I say almost anything, and you can almost get away with it. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
That's funny.
just don't mess with the Tigers.
Just don't mess. That's funny. Um, so this next question is another one that I really like asking, and it's one that probably the only question that really gives people pause for thought in answering, and that is, share with us a time that you struggled in your business and what you learned or you did to overcome it.
Um, the first thing that comes to my mind uh, was I was it was my first I think it was my first or second year full time, uh, and it was Labor Day weekend, and my family and I, we like to camp.
Yeah.
We have a travel trailer now, and so we were about 40 minutes away, and at the time I had a manual transmission truck. And
Okay.
so we were over, didn't have very good cell service at all. We were at a state park. And so it was Monday, we tried to go somewhere on Sunday while we were there at the campground. And I found out that the clutch on my truck went out.
Oh.
And um, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I almost had a complete nervous breakdown
Mm.
over this clutch. Um, for whatever reason, it was, I've never had anything happen like that before. And it was very good that my wife was there, because she was the calming force among us. But because it was the holiday weekend, I couldn't get the truck in anywhere to get it fixed. I was able to get a tow company to come out to the state park
Hmm.
and tow it somewhere. They towed it to a dealership that wasn't. It was about 20 minutes away,
Okay.
but that left us stranded at the campground and without very good cell service at all, no data at all,
Hmm.
so I couldn't like email clients or anything. And so it was a very, very stressful time for me. Just it, thinking the worst, that because I couldn't keep my schedule,
Yeah.
that clients were gonna start dropping me.
Hmm.
And we ended up being at that campground for 5 days when we were supposed to only be there for 3.
Mhm.
And we weren't able to leave the campground until that Wednesday, um, because we didn't get the truck back. And so I was so concerned, and it was a hard time.
Yeah.
But we got back home, and it had been so dry that fall, and so really my anxiety and fear was completely unfounded, because I got back home. I started out with my Monday list. By the end of the day, I was all the way to my Wednesday mowing list,
Mm.
because I had to skip so many lawns because they were just dried out.
Yeah, yeah.
And so from that experience, I started having seasonal depression,
Okay, yeah.
and that affected my attitude that winter. So that that was like the most trying time in my business,
Mm.
just from the aspect of uh, irrational fears, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
of losing customers and things like that. Um, so that's really the biggest thing that I can think of, and it's hard to put it into words. It's hard to explain it to people without, you know, having them see it and experience it with you. But um, that was a very tough time. But since then, I've come out of that, and I actually found out through some blood work
Mm.
that my I had uh, a very low vitamin D,
Oh, okay.
and so that has helped tremendously. And so now we've come back through that. I've learned to just take things in stride. When things are out of your control, you can't
Yeah.
handle it. You can't change it.
Yes.
And so my customers know that I communicate quite often with them.
Mhm.
And so if I'm not there on my scheduled day and I haven't communicated with them, well, something must have happened, and I've built enough rapport that they know that they can trust me, that I am going to take care of them no matter what.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
um, so that was the most trying time in my
Okay.
business. And there's been little things here and there, but they weren't anything like that.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, cool. I totally can relate to you as far as that schedule and things. And although I didn't, anytime my truck is giving me issues as it gets older and stuff, that's always the first thought in your mind is the schedule, the
Yep.
schedule, the schedule.
Yep.
But it always works out.
Yep.
But even more recently, in times like planning to go to GIE. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that's like, hey, this is like I'm still working. Like that's
Yep.
and to come from the West Coast, that's like 5 days that I'm gone, basically a
Right.
week of income gone, right? So that was a
Mm-hmm.
big hurdle for me to overcome. And then on top of it, having Echo put out an invitation to come to their
Yeah.
2020 event like 2 weeks earlier, and I'm like, are you
Yep.
kidding me? Right? This is like you have to miss like 2 times now in the same month. Like I'm gonna lose
Yep.
all my clients, and I start freaking out and all that stuff. But in the end, like say it just always works out. It's not a big deal. With the Echo one, when I really sat and thought about it, it was like, well, for me personally, I only mow Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. So I leave Mondays and Fridays for extra work. So I was like, well, they want me there on Thursday, Friday. Well, that's not a big deal. Like I can just mow Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that week instead of the
Mm-hmm.
other, right? So that was fine. And then with GIE, it was just like, well, what if I just talk to the customers and email them and sort of, feel it out? And they're like, oh, it's fine. Like, go ahead, take it. You never
Yep.
take a break. You're always here. It's like, no, I'm like, but all the leave, and I'm the one making excuses for them going, but all the
Yeah.
leaves and stuff, they're like, it doesn't bother us. You're the one that's cleaning them. So like,
Yep.
if you come back and it's more leaves, then hey, that's more leaves, right? But as far as the look and stuff, it's fine. Like go, don't worry about it. And
Yep.
it's the same with family vacations in the summer. My wife will be like, we want to get away. The kids are off school, and it's the same thing. I'm like, I can't go away. I'm like always, first thing going, I can't go away. I got like all
Yeah.
this clients and things to go. And, but when you really think about it, it's like you were saying, it's summertime. Half of them are all completely dry out. I don't need to be there. And,
Yep.
most of my customers, I'm skipping anyways and stuff. And when I think about going on the trip and coming back, it's like, wow, like I wouldn't have traded that time with my family for anything. That was
Yep.
so awesome. The memories that were made and stuff like that, that it was like so much, worth more than the income, potential income I lost in,
Right.
the handful of clients that, I may have had to skip for that week versus the ones that were going to be skipped anyways because the lawns were dry. So I think a lot of time you just overthink and you just, go crazy. You have that
Yep.
sort of mental breakdown, and yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I think we get, as business owners, it's the business. Everybody says, the business is your baby, and when you think about trying to take care of your kid, you got to feed your kid every day,
Hmm.
and I kind of think of my business that same way. Like if I'm not doing something for my business every day, I can't take that time off. But in reality, you can. Like this year, like you were saying, this year we took a week long family vacation in the summer, and it worked out great.
Hmm.
Most of my customers actually, when I sent out the email of when I was going to take my vacation, they said, "Good for you. I think you should take a vacation." So, I mean, it goes back to, if you treat your clients well, they want the best for you.
Yeah.
Even though they're paying you money, they want the best for you. So um, it, it it all, I think everything stems back to, if you take care of your clients, they'll take care of you.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Like I said, you kind of get in your own head about it. And it
Hmm.
actually reminds me of actually, I got a funny podcast review this week from somebody that kind of mentions that part of it.
Hmm.
I'll just read a little section of it. They say, uh, from information on the latest equipment, interviews with industry leaders, techniques and tips to be more efficient in the field and in the office, and even how a solo operator can get away for a Disney vacation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of funny that people pick up just little things that you talk about, like we're talking about here, right?
Yep.
On how it's not the end of the world to an end of your business to go and do something like that. So I got a chuckle when I read
Absolutely.
that review last night that came in. So what is your favorite thing about being self-employed?
Definitely the freedom.
Okay.
um, Definitely the freedom. Like this year, our season, we got snow uh, the first weekend in November, and so we had like 4 inches of snow on the ground. Um, and I had been planning to re-roof my house that weekend
Okay.
anyway, and it just so happened to work out that it snowed, so I couldn't do any work other than I could roof my house. And then the freedom to do what you want. Like I'm still doing fall cleanups, but I took today off to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And you can basically, as long as you can communicate it to your clients if they're expecting you, um, and you can do it uh, without too much hassle or whatever, you can do basically whatever you want.
Hmm.
Whether you want to start later in the day, you may have had, like when I had our second child, was born 6 weeks early, and so he had a lot more need and care that had to be done when we brought him home. And so if I had a late night, you know,
Hmm.
then I wouldn't start work until maybe 11 that day,
Okay.
and things would get pushed back, but I'd still get it all done. And that's the freedom that you have as the business owner, as a solo operator, is you can kind of change your daily schedule and even sometimes your weekly schedule to be able to accommodate things that you want to do. Kind of like the GIE Expo.
Yes.
Um, I move when it's time for GIE. I move uh, like I split the week in half. So I move some clients up 2 days, and then I move other clients back 2 days,
Okay.
and that makes room for GIE right in the middle of that. So
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
very long 3 weeks there
Hmm.
of work and then GIE and then more work. But I get to go to the GIE. It's
Yeah.
so worth it because you get
Yeah.
that time off. And so that freedom is just, to me, that's priceless.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Because when I
Very,
was
very.
working, for in retail or for the hospital, there you have to get time off approved, and
Hmm.
you can only be, the maximum late time that you can be in the morning is 5 minutes.
Hmm.
And uh and it's just, I'd much rather work for myself
Yeah. Yeah.
and not have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah.
So
So many other stresses that
yes.
yeah, you're always worried about and things like that. They're just
Yep.
unnecessary. Um, so, in what ways do you market your business, and maybe share your number one marketing tip?
Well, I have several.
Okay.
So I have a website.
Yeah.
My website is the biggest marketing tool for me.
Yeah.
I built it myself through
Hmm.
Wix, Wix.com, and it took me to get it to right in the sweet spot where I wanted it. It took me maybe 2 years
Hmm.
to really get it honed into where I wanted it, um, and it does pretty well for me now.
Hmm.
Then I also use, I mean, Craigslist is dying, especially for small business ads, but
Hmm.
I do advertise certain times of the year on Craigslist.
Okay.
I don't see a whole lot from that anymore. And even if I do see it, I put a link to my website in the Craigslist ad. So typically everything filters through the website anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and then I also use Facebook. And Facebook, I use it a little differently than what you might think. I don't do ads on Facebook.
Okay.
Um, I've tried them. I've spent some money on them. I didn't get anything for that. No
Hmm.
return on investment for that. So what I typically do is I go into the buy, sell, trade groups for my area,
Yeah.
and in there they have like a discussion section
Yeah.
rather than sales section. And so I'll post in there. Some of the groups don't want you posting in there,
Yeah.
and they'll remove your ad
Hmm.
or whatever. So what I've started to do is go into like just the community page itself.
Hmm.
See, like here, I actually live in a town called Potterville. So we
Okay.
have several community pages in Potterville. And there's one that will let me post my business things in there. And so, in fact, I did one this morning for snow removal,
Hmm.
just saying if you would like, snow removal services, contact me or whatever.
Hmm.
In fact, my earlier this year, I wasn't sure if they would allow me to post anything for snow removal. Uh, and Facebook has been my number one for snow removal because a lot of times people are caught off guard by it.
Okay.
And so we had snow coming in. And so what I did for my ad, I didn't put a link to my website or anything like that. What I did is I worded the post something like this. I said, I'm not saying that I do snow removal, but if I did, would you be interested in snow removal? And I'm not saying that I'm reliable, but if I did snow removal, I would be reliable.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got flooded with people wanting uh, estimates
Hmm.
from that. I think it just caught people's attention,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I I'll probably end up doing it again later
Yeah.
this year when snow's getting closer again. But that one worked fabulously.
Oh,
So yeah,
it's like
that's kind of
it's
how
just
I do it.
yeah, yeah. It's like being the copywriter for some
Yeah.
headline thing, right? It just kind of makes it stand out from every
Yep.
other normal one that people kind of just ignore and
Yep.
glance up.
And because I didn't have like my website with it, and I didn't post a picture with it either,
Mhm.
um, but because of that stuff, I think I posted it in 2 different pages, and I think the admins didn't really notice it,
Mm.
and so it was
Snuck under the
able
radar.
to, yes,
Yeah,
and that's kind of why I did it that way
yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
But
Brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. That's guerrilla marketing at its finest.
yeah.
Um, so, in your business, do you use any software to manage maybe your scheduling and routes or accounts and stuff like that?
Yeah. For software for scheduling and routes, I use Yardbook.
Okay.
Um, and I love Yardbook for
Hmm.
that. However, when I first started using Yardbook, I did not care for the way they set up their uh, back office stuff, like
Okay.
the accounting part of it.
Okay.
And so I don't use that part of it. I just use um, Yardbook for, I mean, I love the way they do their invoices. So I use
Yeah.
that. And I use their scheduling and their routing software. And then for all of my accounting, I actually use another website called
Okay.
waveapps.com. And you can do invoicing through that as well. And you can take credit cards through that. I don't do that through
Hmm.
them, I do it through Yardbook. It was just an easier setup. But it's very simple to use for accounting. And so I like the Wave Apps website for that. So I use the 2 different ones, and I'm sure I could save some time if I went with just Yardbook, but I just don't. They don't have as many reports as the
Yes.
Wave Apps does, and so I prefer to have that. It makes tax time way easier for me, at least from what I've found. So
Yeah. Yeah.
those are the two that I use,
Okay.
and it seems to work well.
Yeah. 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 I found that when I was looking at Yardbook was the same thing. Really liked it, especially for a free option was good. But the reports were just killing me. It was like, you
Mm-hmm.
guys don't have enough here. And I emailed them and stuff and saying, can you add like this report and this report? Like it would be like an all-in-one solution like that. And they
Yep.
just, I don't know, refused for some reason to
Yeah.
add a couple of simple reports that would just, thing. So I was just, well, I guess I'm gonna have to find an alternative to this because um,
Yep.
yeah, just it was lacking, and I don't like having multiple different softwares. I like having it
Mm-hmm.
sort of all in one. So one of the most common questions that I get in my business um, is, what do I do in the winter? So you being in Michigan, you obviously have a winter. Um, and an off season from lawn care. So, what do you do in the winter?
Well, I do plow snow.
Okay.
Um, Last year, I bought an 8-foot Snow X or Snow EX plow, um, and I have I just hook it up to my 1500 or Ram 1500,
Hmm.
and it does well. Uh, no problem pushing snow at all. Um, and so I do that. And then also in the winter, I can focus a little bit more on hobbies. I like to read a lot.
Hmm.
So in the wintertime, I spend a lot of time reading
Hmm.
and just educating myself more on business and
Yeah.
things like that. So in the summertime, I listen to audiobooks. In the wintertime, I read the books.
Okay. Nice.
So
Yeah, I remember watching one
um,
of your
yeah,
videos on YouTube and seeing your stack of books in your living room floor
yeah,
that you.
yep, yep. and I actually went out and bought another one today. So
Nice.
uh, I, I I'll shop on Amazon, but I personally like to go to the store, feel the book,
Yeah, yeah.
be able to look at it. But yeah, so I do that. I also play guitar.
Nice.
So I play a little bit of guitar in the wintertime just to stay up on it. But
Okay.
yeah, and then obviously spending as much time with the boys as I can while we're here at home. And another really cool aspect about a winter for me is that I get to spend time with extended family too, that I
Okay.
didn't get to used to do in the medical field or in retail. A lot of
Mhm.
times I would have to work instead of being able to go to family functions. So
Okay.
yeah,
Very
that's
nice.
that's been a bright side for the last 3 or 4 years now that I've been full time, is being able to go to holiday events.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, a lot of things I can relate with that as well, especially the guitar portion. I too play guitar as well. I haven't picked it up though, probably for a little while now. Actually, before doing this podcast and um, doing YouTube and all that sort of, that was one of my hobbies. I transitioned from playing guitar and started getting into making guitars in the wintertime in my off
Oh wow,
season
nice.
and doing electric guitars and basses and stuff in my garage. And I did that for a few winters, and it was a lot of fun. But then started getting into this stuff, and this took so much more time that
Yep.
I stopped doing the guitar part of it. But yeah, it's, fun little hobbies.
Did you
Um,
uh
s-
did you use a kit? Like, did you buy a kit online or anything to make the guitar, or did you make them from scratch?
no, everything from scratch, from raw
Oh,
lumber.
nice.
Yeah, so I would go and
Wow.
buy exotic woods, and bought. I've always been into tools, so it was just an
Mhm.
excuse to buy more tools, and
Yep.
I would buy, planers and um, oscillating spindle sanders and all these things that you
Yep.
would need, and just would start to do that. Even the frets, I would buy the raw frets and cut them myself and put them
Oh,
in
wow.
myself. The fretboards I would make from raw rosewood and cut them down and sand um, the radius on them, and even the what are they called? The truss rods.
Hmm.
I would weld them from scratch. So
Oh,
getting
wow.
rod myself and putting them together and threading them and welding it all up and doing that just complete from scratch from zero. The only thing obviously I wouldn't make is the
Nice.
electronics.
Yep.
Would order all that stuff and the hardware pieces and stuff. But yeah, it was a fun fun hobby to get into. And it's funny, I just happened to be um, at a tool store buying a tool, and I was at the cashier ready to pay, and they had one of those little um, rotating little stands with like books and stuff,
Hmm.
add-on items, and the book sitting there just staring me down was how to build your own electric guitar and bass.
Oh,
And I just
nice.
picked it up to flip through it, and it was this beautiful book, like full color pictures step by step. And I was just
Mhm.
sitting there waiting for my time turn in line, and I was like, I could do this, like,
Yeah.
and being already someone who had taken guitar lessons and played guitar and stuff,
Yep.
I was like, I could do this, right? So yeah, I just bought the book, and the
Nice.
rest started making them.
Awesome. Do you have a name for your brand of guitar?
It was just my last name at the time. It was
Yeah.
just Tomei custom handcrafted
Nice.
guitars was what it was, and the logo was just my signature
Sure.
on the headstock. Um, so let me see here. So got off track there. So what are your future plans or goals for your business?
Well, I talked a little bit about it earlier.
Yeah, employees. Yeah.
I'd love to get the business to where it can I mean, your business will never run itself completely. It's always going to need you as the leader to oversee it.
Hmm.
But I would love to get it to a place where it can operate without me for a week or two at a time,
Hmm.
um, to where I can go and do like a 2-week vacation or whatever with the family, and work still continues while I'm gone, rather than work stopping like it does right now.
Mhm.
Um, so that would definitely be uh, something that I'm looking at. So
Okay. So this next question is probably one that I guess also would kind of give people pause for thought to think about a situation. But maybe share if you have maybe the weirdest thing that's you've ever seen or has happened to you during business.
all right, well, this one's going to shock some people,
Okay.
because I listened to one of your interviews. When was it? Yesterday, I think,
Okay.
as I was out doing a cleanup, and you asked this question, and so I got to thinking about it. Um, all right, so in my old neighborhood,
Hmm.
we had an older gentleman neighbor, and I believe he was uh, becoming senile, I think,
Okay.
because he was in his 90s. And I took care of his lawn for a couple of years before he passed away. And we'll I'll keep it PG here,
Yep.
kind of. He offered sexual favors to me, and and that was the absolute weirdest thing I have ever had happen. And it was very uncomfortable. So, well, yeah, we'll leave it at that. It-
I can't say I've ever heard.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. My wife
oh,
and I
that's
still laugh about it to this day.
yeah, yeah, that would be hilarious. But very, like you said, like very uncomfortable. So did you
Yeah,
continue working with the client after that? You just kind of brush it
I
aside and just
I did. I just, because I figured, he's probably, starting to lose his mind a little bit,
yeah.
and I just kind of brushed it off and tried to not you know, not dwell on that too much. Uh, he was the type of person that always wanted to pay in cash, though, so you always had to go inside the house because he wasn't very
Oh.
mobile, and he'd want to talk for like 5-10 minutes,
Yeah,
and there was a few times where it came up, and it was uncomfortable, but I expressed to him on no certain terms that I like the females and not the
yeah,
males.
yeah. That's funny. Doesn't it always feel you've mentioned something there, and even on a, when you're not in that situation, I still find it. I don't like going into people's houses.
Yes.
They ask you, oh, just come in. I'm gonna write, whatever it was. Like back in the day when I would not do credit cards, it was like writing a check, and they'd want
Hmm.
come in and get out of the cold. So I'm like, no, no, no. I just be like, no, I'm filthy. My shoes are all
Yep.
dirty and stuff. And
That's
that kind of, oh,
always
you don't
my
have to worry about your
excuse.
shoes. Oh, no, 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 don't worry. I'm fine out here. I'll just.
Yep.
It's like I don't want to come in your house and see. And the next thing they, um, who knows, like get broken into or something like that, and they go,
Hmm.
oh, he was in our house and saw what we had, and so it's like I don't want nothing to do with the inside.
Yep.
I
Yep.
want nothing to do with the inside of your house. So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
yeah, and also it's like, well, nobody knows that I'm coming into your house.
Yeah.
So what if you turn out to be some psycho or something, right? It's like, yeah, this is how some
Yep.
movies start. So
Yeah. Yep.
um so if on your lawn care business journey, if you were to do this all over again, what is the first thing that you would do maybe differently?
I would get a little bit more educated
Okay.
on not necessarily how to mow a lawn. Mowing the lawn is usually pretty straightforward.
Okay.
It's more on the business end, uh, and with marketing and things like that. I would want to educate myself just a little bit more to know some of the pitfalls to avoid, to be able to grow a little faster.
Okay.
Um, YouTube is an awesome thing, and there's so
Hmm.
much more information out there now than there was when I started.
Yes.
Um, but uh, yeah, I would definitely want to know a little bit more about the business side of things, especially come tax time and things like that, I would
Yes.
want to know a little bit more. But overall, because of YouTube, I think I have been able to avoid a lot of the pitfalls of starting your business, and so it's been relatively smooth for me.
Okay. What is maybe what is your biggest frustration that you have around providing lawn care as a service to the public? For me, I think if anybody listens to my podcast, dog waste is the thing that they'll say is probably my biggest frustration, which it absolutely is just that. Like I can't. I got a funny um, email message from Paul Camara that I interviewed last year. And he emailed me last week and he says, I was just listening to he says, I got to thank you, buddy. You just made my day. I've never laughed so hard. I was listening to your episode on dog waste and charging people like per the pile. And he says, just the sheer disgust I could hear in your voice. He says, I never laughed so hard. He says, we've all been there, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember listening to that
Yeah.
episode. It gave me a few ideas too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Dog waste is a problem.
Yeah.
But it's not one of my, I mean, it's a frustration, but I think it's a frustration for everybody in this
Yeah.
industry. I've actually contemplated starting a dog waste removal company just
Okay.
because of that.
Yeah.
I haven't gone there yet. I'm sure there's more regulations with that, being that it's waste and things like that. So I haven't looked into it too much. I've just, tossed it around in my mind. A lot of times when I roll over a nice big fresh pile, that
Yeah.
usually flies into my mind.
Yeah.
But my biggest frustration, I think, is the low cost, or the not low cost, the low price, I think, of lawn care, um, compared with other industries.
Okay. So
That's
low barrier to entry.
No, not that.
Okay.
Like I don't like to use the word low ball,
Okay.
but it's kind of the low ball price. It's like, if you call a plumber to come fix something, the minimum price per hour is like $200,
Mm-hmm.
for a plumber to come in and do anything, just to show up,
Yes.
and for lawn care, I realize it's not as skilled, but there are guys out there that are doing it, a yard for $25 that should be $45.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe it's the unregulated price of lawn care, or I don't even want to use the word regulated, but the inconsistency of pricing
Mm-hmm.
for lawn care. I know everybody's numbers are different, and maybe somebody can get away with doing that $45 lawn for $25,
Yeah.
but in my area, that's a pretty big frustration for
Mm-hmm.
me. And same thing with snow removal. Um, you know, being insured and offering that reliability, that's expensive. It takes a lot of my time to make that route, and it's a big commitment for me as the business owner to continue to keep that consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And so especially with snow removal right now, it's fresh in my mind. My minimum rate is $30
Okay.
for a driveway and sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of guys are out there doing driveway and sidewalks for $10 to $15.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's not even
they're
worth
not
leaving the house for.
insured. No, they're not insured. And in fact, one of my customers who doesn't use me for snow removal, he told me this year that he'll keep me in mind because the guy he uses right now isn't very reliable.
Mm-hmm.
And a few years ago, he said that this guy peeled his garage door open like a can with his plow. And he said, this guy wasn't even going to tell me that he did it.
Mm.
And he certainly didn't want to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking to myself, so why do you continue to
Can,
use this guy?
yeah, yeah.
He's not insured. You know, he's not.
Mm-hmm.
And he's obviously not honest if he wasn't even going to tell you that he did it.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's just, there's a big frustration with pricing, especially in my area. We're in a lower income market, I would say. In my area, there's a lot of lower middle class families here, and so uh, it uh, it it sometimes makes guys drive down the price,
Okay.
and so it can be frustrating until those companies go out of business, and then uh, these clients do come to people like myself who are charging the proper rate. So
Mm.
that's probably my biggest frustration right now,
Okay.
um, is is the low cost, I guess. That's the only way I know how to say it,
Okay.
of lawn care. So
Yeah. Okay. Um, so what is one of the resources you would say that you use most often for growing your lawn care business? For example, is it like websites like YouTube? Is it a mentor in person that maybe you sit down with? That sort of thing. So what resources or resource would you say you use most often?
uh, definitely YouTube.
Okay.
I'm a big YouTube guy. I have
Mm-hmm.
my YouTube channel. It's a
Yeah.
small YouTube channel, but I'm a big YouTube
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how I started my business. That's how I learned everything, essentially. Starting out with Geek to Freak and the Lawn Care Millionaire. It seemed to be
Yeah.
the only two guys that were really doing anything.
Yeah. Back then.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, I had Geek to Freak to show me how, and Lawn Care Millionaire to talk me through some of the pitfalls of the business side. And so it was a starting point. From there, and up till today, I've read a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
Audible is a huge resource that I utilize for business, for the business side of things, uh, and for the personal side of things as well. But um, definitely using educational resources. Another one
Okay.
that I want to mention, I know you've had him on the podcast, I believe, would be Mike Bedell,
Yeah.
um, and his Debt Free Landscaper website. Uh, the free contracts and things that he has there have been super helpful for me, especially for snow removal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that has been a lifesaver for
Oh,
me.
awesome.
So, and Mike's a friend, and so I can, shoot him a text message and with anything, because he's been in the business for, gosh, I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah. Long
12,
time.
18 years, something
Yeah.
like that. So he's a great resource to have. Um, but by far, YouTube and Audible have been my two biggest resources for growing my business.
Okay. Um, so what is one thing that you think people don't realize about starting or running a lawn care business?
That it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work, and it's not easy. Um, you know, I hear some, I've heard people say, well, it's just cutting grass. Anybody
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And well, yes, anybody can cut grass, but not anybody can cut it and make it look good.
Mm.
And, um, and then when you go to the business side of it, there's a lot of pitfalls in the lawn care landscaping industry that you have to watch out for. I'm sure there's more in the landscaping side with contracts and things like that than there is in lawn care, but still, there's a lot of different things that you have to watch out for,
Mm-hmm.
such as pricing. If you want to stay in business, it's there's no in lawn care, there's no set rule or anything about pricing, which makes it difficult when you're starting
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know what to charge. Um, when I started, my base price was $25. That's gone up to 30 for like the small, like if they want me to mow one strip of grass, it's going to be $30,
Yeah.
not coming out for anything less than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, um, that there's pitfalls in pricing,
Hmm.
and definitely, you've got to know your worth in it as well. So, yeah, those are some of the things that I would think of.
Okay. Awesome. You actually answered two questions there at
All
the
right.
same time. My next question was, what is one hidden pitfall that
Yeah.
people don't, that prevent people from succeeding? So you absolutely answered that. So the next question is one of my absolute favorites, and that is, uh, share your best piece of advice with people thinking about starting a lawn care business. Now, I want you to um, come at this from, this is somebody that you know, so you only want the best for them. You want to see them succeed. So what would you say if somebody came up to you, and said, "Hey, Aaron, I'm thinking about starting a lawn care business. What can you tell me?"
Um, I would say the best piece of advice that I would have for them is start small.
Okay.
Start with start with what you've got, or close to what you've got. You know, yeah, I think it's always best for anyone in any business to start in the trenches, to start out as a grunt,
Hmm.
with a push mower, weed eater, and a blower, and see that way you get all sides
Yeah.
of this industry. Um, and when you do that, you also appreciate more when you build up to, the larger equipment that makes life so much easier.
Hmm.
Um, and Start small and grow relatively slowly,
Hmm.
um, because growth, especially in lawn care, can be a killer,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, because you could have a really great summer where the lawns are just growing all the time, um, and it could be great. But if you take on too much, you're going to start letting customers down. Goes back to that reliability thing, and you could really lose your shirt that way.
Hmm.
You start getting a bad reputation.
Yeah.
So when you start slow and you grow slowly, um, you can really take your time and learn how much you can take on, and really build that confidence with your clients,
Hmm.
and build a very strong business that
Yeah.
way. And when you take it slow, you also have time to learn the ins and outs of the business end of the business. And you're always going to make mistakes,
Yeah.
but you will have time to recover from them when you stay small or grow slowly, and build up. And once you start growing, there's, if you're just a solo guy, growing slowly is I would say that'd be the preferred way.
Okay.
Once you get into a little bit larger equipment, then you can start taking on clients a little faster, grow a little faster, um, and because you've kind of come through some of those pitfalls when you were smaller, and as you grow, those those things that are going to happen as your company grows, those things grow as well.
Yeah.
So um, if you grow slowly, you'll be able to handle those pitfalls easier than if you were growing just by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
There's a company in my area that actually took on my wife's where my wife works. She works at a credit union,
Hmm.
and they were they weren't a super small company, but they they put in a bid for their lawn and snow contract. And this credit union has a bunch of branches and two home offices. And so this company put in the bid and they got it. and they were scrambling. They
Mm,
had to go out and buy like $1.5 million worth of new equipment
mm,
because they didn't have the equipment to service everything. And it was, I mean, I think they're doing okay now. They had their ducks in a row, I think, but boy, for me, that would have been scary.
yeah,
That would
yeah,
have been too much growth too fast.
yeah.
But yeah, is if you grow slow, you build. In my view, you can build a very strong client base
Mhm.
and build a strong company that way.
Yeah, awesome. Great advice. Especially, as you said, starting out with, a smaller push mower and things like that. Not only is it a lower investment to start out,
Mhm.
but, you can probably, even get into it with actual commercial equipment because of that lower cost of entry there. But it'll also put you into profitability a lot quicker than dumping a whole bunch of cash or going into debt with big, expensive mowers to start out. And I've told the story before about a podcast listener who was an engineer, was listening to the podcast, wanted to get into lawn care, really, enjoyed the podcast, was getting a lot of value from it, built a website on his own from some of my tutorials and stuff like that, got it to the point where he was, built up a whole bunch of clients, had bought a trailer, had all this stuff, and then realized after his first spring that he actually didn't like doing lawn care. That it was, it was just this sort of fantasy in his head because he was maybe unhappy with his other job, but doing
Mhm.
when he actually got into actually running his lawn care business, it made him appreciate his engineering job, and it sort of reignited his passion for that. And luckily he hadn't quit his engineering
Mhm.
job and was doing the lawn care in the evenings and on the side. But he was like, man, I have so much respect for contractors and what they have to do. He says, it was great, and everything that you've talked about on your podcast has been tremendous, but it's just not for me anymore, right? Once I did. So, and not having that debt of having all this equipment and all this stuff that you're stuck paying for that maybe you can't sell, that people don't want, is, a great piece of advice there. So, last question. So, if people want to follow you online, how can they find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Lansing Lawn Service. Um, we're a small channel. Just I'm over 1,600 subs now, which is pretty
Nice.
cool.
Yeah.
Uh, but we're still small, growing slowly, so it's
Hmm.
it's good. You can find me on Instagram also at Lansing Lawn Service, and then you can find me on Facebook at Aaron Sutter. That's where I do have a business page, but it's
Okay.
for the business.
Yeah.
I'm more social on my personal Facebook page, so just Aaron Sutter.
Awesome. So I want to thank
Yeah.
you actually for not only coming on to the podcast today, taking the time out to do this interview, but also for giving me a ride at GIE. I just wanted to mention that as well. On 4th Street, I had planned to go with JC, the lawn care guy. He had driven me out there, but then he had to leave early. So I was kind of stranded, and, I was going to call an Uber and stuff, but you gave me a ride back to the hotel. So thank you very much for that as well. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me. And you made it a good experience with taking you back to the hotel because the year before I took an Australian to the GIE, and the year before that I took some guy from down south, I don't know, to the GIE as well. So just out of the blue, hey, I need a ride, and
Hmm.
so uh, yeah, it's no problem. Now now, don't everybody ask me for a ride
Yeah.
because I only have so much room,
There you
but
go.
I'm happy to do it.
There you go. So thanks again for coming on the show.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Have a great day.